I was employed on the 1st of April 1998, so 27 years this year.
About 20 years now.
20 years ago. 30 years as of the 24th of October.
So that would be 29 years in April next year.
And must say it's been a very, very interesting journey. I mean, this is like a second home to me, if I can say that.
Everything's fine, huh? Okay. Just shift it forward a bit. All the weight's on my leg. Yeah. Just a little bit forward. Okay. Okay, right fins up the bag. Yeah, you guys all ready? We should count this down.
No, I'm not ready.
Okay, let's wait for this wave. Watch your wave. Okay, on this next one. 1, 2, 3.
Fire!
In 1994, construction begins at the waterfront in Cape Town, South Africa. It's the culmination of 5 long years of intensive research, development, dreams, and scientific breakthrough.
It was by chance, believe it or not.
It was just going to be a job. I was desperately looking for work. I'd just arrived in Cape Town and wanted to do something a little bit more than waitressing in restaurants.
My high school English teacher made me aware of volunteering at the aquarium. So the aquarium had just opened that year in November 1995, and she said, well, why don't you go and apply to be a volunteer at the aquarium. That's what I did.
Before the aquarium opened, I used to help out when we had off-site facilities to kind of hold the fish that we were going to introduce into the exhibits here at Granger Bay, down in Simonstown. And I remember diving in the predator exhibit before Maxine and the other sharks had even been put in there.
I think it was in November when I actually lost my job.
Must be honest, when I took the position, I thought it might be a little bit of a stepping stone, and I saw myself being here for 2 to 3 years, and like I said, it's been 20 years.
And then someone told me that, hey, do you know that the aquarium actually takes people for the festive season? And that was in November 2004.
Situated in Cape Town's Victoria and Alfred waterfront, the Two Oceans Aquarium has established itself as one of South Africa's most popular tourist destinations. It is uniquely positioned to compare and contrast the flora and fauna of two mighty oceans.
Attracting the interest of the president of the World Wildlife Foundation, the Duke of Edinburgh visits the project during the 1995 royal tour to South Africa.
When Prince Philip came, they were going to open the basin here, flooded, you see. So he was asked to come and press the plunger, and blow the entrance so the water could start coming in. So it's just like a little thing as a show. It's not very. Anyway, but what happened? So we were told, all us aquarists and volunteers, to stand in where the foyer is now. It was all scaffolding, and you didn't know, half the time you didn't know where you were then. Anyway, so we all lined up, and then Lex, the director, came and he said to us, so if Prince Philip comes to speak to you, then you must say, yes, Your Majesty, and all that, and give him a little bow. So we're all standing there, and the first person he actually goes and asks was a volunteer, and he said, hello, do you work here? And this guy said, no. So he said, oh, and he walked on. That was funny.
within a year or two of being at the aquarium and looking after the kelp forest, we realized that the membrane lining that they'd put throughout the aquarium, but in particular in the two large exhibits, the predator and the kelp, that lining had failed and it was bubbling. And as a result, there were pinholes through it, and there was seawater on the steel, and those two exhibits really needed to be fixed. And fix them means take them down, remove the lining, repair concrete. And so we were constantly asking our owners. We felt that the best way to do it would be to build another exhibit, which in the end was the Oceans exhibit, so that we could transfer animals into that exhibit, and so that when we'd finished fixing the kelp and predator, we'd reopen with something new. If we'd just closed kelp, fixed it, opened it, closed predator, fixed it, opened it, nothing would have changed really. So, but the Dubai World and London Regional had absolutely no intention of investing any money in the aquarium. And it was only in 2011 they sold, just after the financial crisis, back to South African companies, to Growthpoint and PIC, to 50% shareholders. At the time, Investec still had a 30% share, but they've subsequently been bought out, and now we're wholly owned by the V&A Waterfront. And with that has come, in 2014, we started construction of the new Oceans exhibit and the Avenue Conference Centre.
It was incredibly exciting to see this new build coming to fruition, and being able to see all the different, all the different animals coming in, seeing the new way of building rockwork, which was fantastic. That was really interesting to see.
The Oceans exhibit as an addition, which was incredible. It gave us a brand new opportunity to extend our events portfolio because of our evening events, and that led to the kelp forest being fixed up, the current shark exhibit being fixed up. So we've had our fair share of construction, but I always view it as we're growing with the waterfront. There is always something going on. There's always something new.
And I think being part of a build like we are currently, I think is also an exciting opportunity for staff, because it offers all sorts of different learning experiences and challenges obviously as well.
And now this year we've started a new penguin exhibit, and next year we'll finish off a new children's centre and new classrooms, new office space. The V&A Waterfront really are investing in the aquarium. They clearly see the benefit of having an aquarium of this nature in the waterfront.
Claire Taylor, and I am currently the Marine Animal Wildlife Specialist and Interactive Dry Display Specialist. So I was extremely privileged about 15, probably longer than that now, about 16, 17 years ago, to team up with Vincent Calder, who was the technical manager and the technical specialist back then. He's unfortunately retired. But we did something very special. We've left a huge legacy, which is the Waterfront Wildlife Program, Marine Wildlife Program. And the way that kind of all came about was that there were a lot of seals at that stage, all those years ago, that used to haul out right next to the aquarium and lie on the jetties. And they used to have box bands or fishing line or all sorts of things around them, and it was actually cutting really badly. And that was right outside the aquarium. And back in those days, the aquarium was still quite small, and we didn't have a huge amount of staff to be able to deal with them. And when we did try, we weren't actually allowed to. They fell under what was then the Marine and Coastal Management Government Department. But you can imagine the public would arrive here and they would actually call on the aquarium, which is what I would do, to please go and help that seal. So, and we would have to say, and our visitor services staff would have to say, sorry, we aren't allowed to help. You need to phone this number, knowing that no one was going to be able to do anything about it. So Vincent and I just started following the Oceans to Coast guys around every single morning. And yeah, we learned such a huge amount from them. We learned how to try and disentangle seals from the end of jetties where they tend to sit when they're compromised. We learned how difficult it was, all the little tricks of the trade, but we still really weren't actually allowed to do it ourselves. Then I was obviously, I think I said before, I was an acarist. I used to potter around in the harbour in a wetsuit looking for little grobies and things underneath the platform that I could put at the microscope. And I came across the seal was fast asleep on one of the jetties, and I thought just for fun, let's see how close I can get. So I swam as close as I could. I ended up going underneath the jetty, getting right up to the animal, listening to him snoring away. And then I just for the fun of it, put my finger through the slats and actually touched the box band, and the seal didn't wake up. So I moved away from the seal, I jumped out of the water, I ran to visitor services, and I asked them for a pair of scissors, which at that stage I had already still do, have a horrible reputation for losing things. So people do not give me keys and will not give me a pair of scissors. But they reluctantly gave me this pair of scissors. I ran back down and I just put the scissors through the slats, and I cut the box band and pulled the box band through, and the seal was still asleep. And that was really, for me, that was the beginning of the wildlife program and the marine rescue program. I ran up to the CEO's office and the curator's office, sopping wet in my wetsuit. I was so happy. In hindsight, they probably wondered what on earth I was talking about. But that was really the beginning. Ran to Vincent and said, scissors are great. And I actually was trying to remember if I ever returned those scissors. I probably didn't, but yeah. But we need something that is much sharper and can just be pulled down. And that's where Vincent immediately started welding up a little cutter, and then that's actually transgressed and kept going to this really amazing cutter that we use now. So that was really the beginning, but where it is now, it's taken like a team of people to actually get it to that, and it's had a long road of rescuing sunfish, rescuing seals from the dry dock, and helping the waterfront also have there's a real conflict between marine wildlife here, so mainly the seals, and all the ship owners and the people who moor their boats here. So we've been able to help the waterfront with that. So it's a program that's grown with a lot of people's input, but that was really the beginning of it.
Okay, yeah. I think
Got it?
put your hands through. Just check, go through the fur, through your hands, so you're not happy there.
Okay. Hello. You're free. You're free.
It's a deep cut, so let's tell Ilse.
Just pull up. And we just want to lift it away.
Doesn't remind me to bring crutches.
Yeah, just take it out.
A multitude of challenges also faced the marine biologists responsible for stocking the facility, but these challenges culminated in a number of important international scientific breakthroughs.
One of the strangest memories I have was when I was operations manager, and I can't remember the year, but we were looking for a short-tailed stingray, a large short-tailed stingray to put into the predator exhibit. And Struisbaai at the time, Struisbaai Harbour, when the fishermen were catching lots of fish, then they'd just outside the harbour, they'd stop and they'd clean them and gut them, and it attracted many, 10, 15, 20 short-tailed stingrays into that area. And on one occasion we decided we wanted to collect one, and because we didn't want to have to hook the animal. I mean, they're 150, 200 kilo ray. You don't want to catch it that way. So we literally just put food down on the slipway at Struisbaai in the harbour and waited for one of the stingrays to come that we liked. I think a few arrived and we thought too small or too big, and then one of them came on. We thought, no, perfect animal. We just put the net around it, picked it up, put it in the tank and brought it back to the aquarium. Arrived at work the next day, and the front page of the Cape Times was aquarium kidnaps Parry the stingray from Struisbaai Harbour. Front page, full picture. So the next thing, we were sitting right here at this table, Pat and myself, and it wasn't DFFE, Forestry Fisheries, it was Oceans and Coasts in those days, and their lawyer was sent to come and chat to us, and it was the most intriguing conversation, because we had had a permit. Firstly, Pari, I don't know how they identified Pari, because there were 20 stingrays. They all look fairly similar to me. And Trail Witten, one of the commercial fishermen there, had said to me years before, he said, the only reason that these animals haven't been caught and sold is because they're of no value. Otherwise, it was a commercial fishing community. So our permit at those days allowed us to pretty much do anything. We were allowed 1,000 of anything from anywhere at any time. But there was one thing we weren't allowed to do, and that was use a net in a commercial harbour. For obvious reasons, because it might get entangled in boats and whatnot. Not use a net on a slipway in a commercial harbour. But the lawyer, all he could do was politely point this out. Anyway, we ended up having to take Pari out of the exhibit, that was a performance, and take Pari back to Struisbaai, release Pari back into the harbour, and then literally go 100 meters past the harbour and perform exactly the same operation on the beach and catch one of the other 20 stingrays that were in the harbour. But for me at the time, I mean, especially because I was the one leading that team, I was fairly horrified by the whole thing and the accusations. But if that's what it took for Struisbaai to appreciate the short-tailed stingrays that were visiting their harbour, then for me at the end of the day it was a win. Now they're pretty much a tourist attraction, whereas before that they were just, well, if they were worth anything we'd have hauled them out and sold them long ago. So at the end it was a win, but it was an interesting front page headline to have to come to work to.
Aquariums provide opportunities for children, and indeed all visitors, to observe animals in ways in which it would never be possible in the wild.
So when the aquarium first opened, there wasn't really, I guess, the intention of having an education specific department, but soon after it opened its doors, we started having school groups arriving, wanting to experience the aquarium and engaging with the exhibits and the animals as they encountered it. And so initially the first iteration of the education department, I guess, was the Two Oceans Aquarium Trust. And it was mainly at that point the activity center, the Children's Activity Center, which was sponsored by AfriSam at the start, as well as 3 classrooms. The area that we now have, the gift shop, that was a classroom. It was called the Simba classroom, and was sponsored by Simba, as you can guess. And the 2 existing classrooms were sponsored by Old Mutual. And so those were the 3 classrooms that we used at the aquarium. Each of those classrooms were equipped with a whiteboard, a microscope, and also at that point it was a projector. And by projector I'm talking overhead projector back in the day, and as well as the slide projector. So we used slide projectors and overhead projectors back in the day. And most of the interaction that we had with school groups at that time was a story in the AfriSam Education Center, the Children's Center, or a puppet show for that age group. And in the Simba classroom, or the 2 other classrooms, which were computer classrooms, by the way, Simba classroom, we had a very short 10-15 minute introduction to the 2 oceans and what they would likely see as they walk around the aquarium. But at that point it really wasn't linked to the curriculum at that point. We weren't really thinking around that. And then we got Margot Branch, wife of Professor George Branch at UCT, and she assisted us in putting a number of worksheets and suggested lessons together, which we then unpacked a bit even further. And so that was the start of our lessons relating to the curriculum a little bit more closely. And we expanded that from these 15-minute sort of short talks to eventually the 30 minutes to 45-minute lessons that we currently have.
My journey with the ocean has definitely changed in the last 20 years. I didn't grow up on the coastline. I grew up in Gauteng, and the ocean is something that you enjoyed during a holiday. It was 4.5 or 12 hours away, depending on whether you headed to KwaZulu-Natal or Cape Town. And I never really gave it much thought. After that, I didn't think about it at school. It wasn't a career path that I chose. I'd like to say the aquarium chose me in the end.
I arrived at Rhodes University in 1986, and I'd always been a keen fisherman growing up, but fishing in Europe, in dams, and float fishing in Europe, coarse fishing as they called it. And when I arrived in Grahamstown, we used to spend, I met my wife there in my second year, and we often went away camping along that whole Eastern Cape coast, all the way through into the Transkei. And they were always kind of camping and fishing trips, and I absolutely fell in love with the South African coast, certainly the Eastern Cape coast.
I knew nothing about the ocean when I started at the Two Oceans Aquarium, and so it was this whole new world that opened up to me, and it was something that I'd always wanted to do, diving, but having lived in a landlocked city and then country before that, there were no opportunities at that time. So I did my diving course, and being able to dive, get into the water and be amongst the animals.
Learning how to scuba dive. So I learned how to scuba dive whilst I was here, and that then obviously opens up an entirely new world when you go out into the ocean and see the organisms in their natural environment.
Diving, not just any diving, but diving with the sharks. And so it was quite interesting. I think that was, I actually dived, I ended up diving twice. And that was in 2011 and 2012. And what actually led for me to dive, because at one point in my life before I became a floor manager, I was actually making those bookings for people to dive with the sharks. And so now I just got tired of people, when I sell these dives to people, come and dive, and then people will ask me, said, hey, have you done it? Have you done it? I just got tired of saying no. And then I said, let me actually just bite the bullet and try this. And wow, I couldn't believe it for the first time. And that's why I had to do it again. So that was something that was I never thought I would do, and it's basically my number one unforgettable memory here at the aquarium.
So I got my qualifications as a diver, and been diving in the exhibits, and then I had this opportunity to dive in a copper hat suit, which was brought to the aquarium by the Historical Diving Society. So it was a copper hat Mark 5 or Mark 4 diving suit. I can't remember which one, but that was that was like being an astronaut, because you've got this huge big helmet that you wear with this little viewing panel. The air supply is from the roof. And then you have these huge big heavy boots which weighed something ridiculous, and in fact on the surface when they were getting me dressed, the helmet is so heavy you can't move your head around. It's incredibly heavy, so you are this cumbersome big chunky thing on land, and then you go into the exhibit and suddenly it feels like, as I say, I felt like an astronaut walking on the moon, because you walk with this very slow motion slow motion steps, and it was just something that I again some experience I never thought that I would have, and to do that. So that was a very memorable dive and experience.
Incredible. It was a totally different feeling, because you're aware that you've got this huge stuff, and I kept getting reflections of myself in the window, and I couldn't believe it was me. I was feeling quite nervous before I went in. I was worried about not so much the sharks or anything like that, but the air thing was quite worrying me, how to control the air. But that was really easy, and also having Woody and David on the surface, being able to talk to them was great, because they were able to assure me.
In second year at university at Rhodes, we did a diving course. It was then with CMAS, 2-star sports dive course, and strangely enough, the two instructors, one was Tony McEwen, who was the first employee at the Two Oceans Aquarium, employee number 1, and Guy Musson, who was a senior aquarist when I arrived here. In fact, he was the one that sent me the advert to say that the aquarium was looking for an aquarist, and would I be interested in applying. So I started diving long before I arrived here, and then at UCT, because one of the projects I was working on at UCT required me to do diving work, I had to do the commercial dive course at UCT. And I arrived at UCT in 1994, and at the time, when I did the dive course, the aquarium team was busy being trained as commercial divers. I met Zaid and Brent and Struan, the original curatorial team that all had to go through a commercial dive course. So a funny diving history here. When
our curator at the time decided that it was time to release Yoshi, our loggerhead turtle, she's still my favorite animal, and I just looked at her one morning and realized that I've always been able to observe her from the dry side, and I wanted to meet her up close and personal before she was released. So it took me 45 minutes to get into a wetsuit. I have absolute respect for our aquarists that does that on a daily basis, but I managed to do it, and I spent probably about 30 minutes in the oceans exhibit with her, and just being able to see her from the inside of the exhibit, and it is one of the most memorable experiences of my career.
My name is Talitha Noble, and I'm the Conservation Manager here at the Turtle Conservation Centre at the Two Oceans Aquarium. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the Turtle Conservation Centre. The aquarium's 30, it's been around for 30 years, and since the beginning people have brought sea turtles to the aquarium. There's turtles that have been stranded on the coastline or brought in by fishing vessels. It was ad hoc, it was random, and they would just be incorporated into the ongoing operations of the aquarium. And so turtles like Yoshi went on to display for a long time. Other turtles were kind of cared for and then released back into the wild, and that was ongoing over many years. And then we started collecting data on these little turtles and big turtles in around 2010. And in 2015, we had quite a big year. There was a larger stranding of sea turtles, the little post hatchlings in particular, that required quite a lot of teamwork and action to take place. But it was really only in around 2016 when we started focusing it as its own program, as its own dedicated program, and that was really an exciting time, and that was when I also joined the journey of the Turtle Conservation Centre. And so what we did was to start really working on developing the process of care, of husbandry, which includes life support and nutrition and enrichment and the medical care they require. We started building a bit of a team of volunteers and a bit of a network. And it was also really a few years later in 2018 that we started developing a rescue network. And that's been such a key part of our work. That work was started by Tracy Whitehead, one of our most incredible team members. And over the last sort of 8 years, that work has really exploded, and now our rescue network has over 2,000 community members from around the Western Cape coastline in it. And that's really key because people need to know that there's turtles that strand. They need to know what to do when they find them. And that's really provided us with more turtles to care for. So the work of the Rescue Network has been a big part of our journey. Over the years, we've had an incredible team of people who volunteered with us from all around the world, but an incredible local team as well. And that's been very special. As the work has grown, our demand for space has increased, and so we have a few different places around the aquarium where we house turtles, and that's been one of our challenges, I guess, is that an increased rescue network and awareness has meant we've had more turtles and we've had limited space to keep them. But we've always made do with what we have, and it's been great to also be so linked in with the aquarium operations in that way. Another big move for the Turtle Conservation Centre was the establishment of the Two Oceans Aquarium Foundation, because that all of a sudden meant that we could start fundraising for our work more proactively. We could grow our team more, and that was an incredible sort of milestone for us and has led to incredible growth. Over the years, we've had incredible people in our team. Malek, who's now curatorial, Martine, who's now marine wildlife program, Claudine, Alex. Our team has been broad, and now we have an incredible team: Razan, Aisha, Sio, and Sange, who are part of the daily care. Our animal health team, with Dr. Bernice leading the way, is incredible. And through the last 2 years in particular, we've been able to grow our strategy, our fundraising efforts, our plans for the future, and those plans include rescuing more turtles, caring for them better, being better for the turtles. But they also have other things involved, including the development of our new standalone turtle hospital in the next 2 years, a bigger, better network across the continent for turtle care and awareness, and just an increase in the desire to use turtles as ambassadors for ocean health. And so personally, the journey of being part of the turtle program from back in 2016 when it was still quite little through to now when it feels very much like a teenager that is starting to spread its wings a little bit. It's been a very humbling process, a very special one, and yeah, one I'll be eternally grateful for.
So one of the animals that just was so special to me and to other people in the aquarium was Bob the green turtle, who came into us in a devastating state, injuries on the plastron, and then obviously a lot of internal stuff going on. And then we discovered, plastic. He pooped out a whole bunch of plastic and balloons, and just this turtle was something very, very special. He was a she, we discovered after we'd released her. Just this journey of this animal that was at a point of actually going to be euthanized because we just thought she wasn't going to survive. And then the vet at the time saw this movement in her eye and realized actually this animal has a chance and we need to give her the chance to survive. So yeah, this incredible story of how this turtle survived, and the story that we were able to share with the public around single-use plastic and balloons. And so Bob became this ambassador, and her story went far and wide. People really got to know Bob. Visitors came to see her. Little kids, really used to ask where Bob is and wanted to see Bob. And just, I think this very special turtle, and I would often just go and stand at the exhibit and watch her just moving around, or just have a quiet moment. And when you look into an animal's eye, I'm probably going to get emotional about this, but when you look into an animal's eye, turtles they've existed on this planet for millions of years, and you have this connection with that animal, that ancient wisdom that animal has. It's life-changing. It really is a life-changing moment. So when Bob finally was ready for release, it was really bittersweet, because here was this animal that we had cared for 8 years. The team had put in an immense amount of work to get her release ready. All the enrichment work that Alex did with her, and then seeing her being able to go back to the ocean. And I wasn't at the release myself, but seeing the pictures. As I say, very bittersweet, because you want the animal to go back into the wild, back into the ocean, so that they can live their lives. But at the same time, you also know the pressure and the threats that animal is going to face once again, because unfortunately plastic is such a big threat for animals in the ocean. So very, very bittersweet. And I think about Bob often, and hope she's doing well out there in the big blue wild.
The daily running of the Two Oceans Aquarium requires tireless work behind the scenes. The custodians of the living exhibits are the aquarists, and their tasks range widely, from public awareness and education through to diving and fishing expeditions, and the more routine but equally essential day-to-day tasks such as feeding the animals and cleaning and maintaining the exhibits.
Probably one of the craziest stories that we've had at the aquarium over the years was when Tony McEwen left, I think about 2000, and went to Kuwait. He asked Pat if we could supply ragged-toothed sharks for the Kuwait Science Museum, or I forget what it was called. And so we agreed, and it was Kuwait that has lots of oil. And so they just chartered an aeroplane, a cargo plane, and I think we took them 3 sharks in their large kind of white fiberglass boxes that we put them in, with oxygen cylinders and filtration units, and we loaded those onto the plane. So there was the captain and the co-pilot and Pat and I, and 3 sharks, and otherwise an entirely empty plane. I'd wished I'd taken a frisbee with me, because you could literally, and it's empty, it's a cargo plane, there's nothing in it. They put some seats in, 3 seats in for Pat and I to sit on, and somewhere to lie down, because it was a long flight. So we left Cape Town, and when we were approaching, we went kind of up through Africa, and then we were cutting across toward the Middle East over Somalia. And then the captain asked Pat and I, he said, we still don't have permission to fly over Somalia, where there was a war raging at the time, and are we still prepared to give it a go? I mean, we'd packed up the sharks, we were in the air, so he was kind of warning us that, well, it's possible someone might shoot something at the aeroplane. Well, anyway, we carried on with the journey. I mean, we weren't going to turn around, we were already 3/4 of the way there. Landed in Kuwait, and then took the sharks through to the aquarium. We met with great dignitaries arrived at the airport and met us, and Pat and I delivered the 3 raggies to their new aquarium. I remember being taken out. Our celebratory dinner was to a Japanese restaurant, and it was the very first time I ate sushi, raw fish, and I remember it being quite interesting at the time.
Working here at the aquarium, one thing that I can say, at least about me, and I've heard other people saying this as well. Here we are a family. We work as a family. We treat each other more like family members than colleagues. We care about each other, and so if I were to highlight, like any moments with some of the staff members, the truth is I really don't know which one to pick, because I have such a strong connection with lots of the people that I work with.
I have been incredibly privileged to work with the staff at the Two Oceans Aquarium, both those who are currently here and those that have moved on to other careers or have retired or gone off to do other things. And I think, in the early days there were some mentors, people that I I used to be like a sponge around. I would just, want to learn as much as I possibly could. Carola was my first mentor, and she taught me the power of greeting people. She greeted everybody that she came across in the aquarium, and I sort of have, that's something that I try to do. Lex Fernhead, our first director, an amazing man, so humble, and he had this habit of arriving at the wrong moment. So we would be doing something naughty or doing something, that wasn't quite professional, and Lex would suddenly show up, and he was never judgy, or he just, he would have a laugh with us and then carry on. Pat Garrett, he was the next director and also an incredible mentor. Spent a lot of time learning from him, and then went fishing with him in Durban looking for eels.
Gerard Bierkes, he was a volunteer, joined as an aquarist when we employed him, and then eventually was my right-hand man when I was the ops manager, and the two of us did so much collecting together. I have such fond memories of fishing with him. When I joined the aquarium as a keen kind of rock and surf fisherman, which Gerard also was, all the fishing that the aquarium had done for the animals that were in the exhibits was from a boat. We went to Cape Point and caught galjoen for the kelp forest, and we did the most amazing trips looking for white mussel cracker. We were both determined to get a decent collection of white mussel cracker into this exhibit, and Gerard liked them so much he eventually got a white mussel cracker tattoo on his arm, or so, I can't remember where he got it, but he was very proud of it. And the one trip I'll never forget with him, we were fishing for about a week around Mossel Bay area. We were waiting for the Southwestern District's anglers to come and join us, because Gerard was a competition angler and he knew quite a lot of them, and in that area around Mossel Bay they catch really nice white mussel cracker. So we were waiting for them most evenings, but we'd end up fishing all day and then all evening into the night with them, and then be up bright and early fishing. And the one day we were at Danabai, just up the coast, and I was completely moch. I think it must have been 35 degrees. I'd had my fill of the sun, and I remember Gerard was still keen. He was on the beach still fishing, line out. I eventually packed up the line and I crawled underneath the Land Cruiser in the parking lot at Danabai just to get out of the sun and put my head down for a while.
We've got nature. Where is nature? Nature, please come close to me.
Somebody that is very, very close to my heart was Khonzani. And Khonzani was an educator
who unfortunately passed away very suddenly. It was a dear close friend, but also a bit of a son as well.
Okay, if I've got nature, we've got problem. There's something missing. The human. Human, please come up, please. Thank you very much. And now, the educator is just standing in front of the class, is teaching about environment. To do that, it is such a difficult job. Now, thank you, the humans and the nature are connecting through magic.
He started out as a school group coordinator, coordinating all of the groups as they arrived. Soon he then progressed into a teacher, and he was just a very, very vibrant personality. He didn't necessarily have all of the marine knowledge at the start, but he had the vibrant personality that engaged you right off the bat.
I know some of you are wondering, what is this magician doing on stage while we're talking about the ocean? What's happening in the ocean, guys? It's magical.
My favorite one of his was when we were having him to accept owls and snakes and frogs. When we did Frogs Beyond the Pond, he had this belief that frogs attracted snakes, and so you should kill frogs. So it was a whole kind of process, and that represents when he was able to hold a frog. That was such a beautiful learning focus for him.
I used to be scared of frogs, snakes, and the other sea animals as well. Even when I started the company that I work for now, I was still learning about trying to understand the animal and connect with it. Once I understand, I'm able to connect with the animal, I am able now to teach others. It took me about 3 or 4 years to be able to hold up a frog. The picture that I've got there, guys, my boss was overseas and he did a picture with me and the frog, and it was a force, but it took me an hour to get it right. I'm smiling on the after now. Thank you.
My personal journey here at the aquarium has been that with mostly highs, I must say. I say mostly highs because I'm the kind of person who always focus on the positive. I do not have time to entertain the negative. I do not have that time, so I always look at the positive. And then of course, because I work front of house and we work with people who come from all sorts of places. I mean, we work like small children, like to the old age, different countries all over the world, even different provinces here within South Africa. If there's one thing that I've actually learned is that in our line of work, it's very important to be kind. You never know what people are going through. And I always encourage my team that what we need to remember is that when people visit us, they actually come to experience something different or to have a good time. And it is very important that each and every visitor that walks through our doors, we must treat them as they are the very first one for the day. Even the very last one, but it's very important that they must all get like equal service.